So Belgian Dubbel is just about my favorite style. Over the past year or two, I've been really focusing on learning to brew some different Belgian beers, including a couple versions of a Dubbel. So if you like Belgian beers as much as I do, and you're interested in brewing your own Dubbel, well, stick around. I'm going to share my recipe, I'm going to go into my brew day fermentation and bottling process, and then I'm going to crack open one of my own home brews, see how it compares to these guys. Well, thanks for stopping by. This is Brent from Cascades Homebrew. My channel here is devoted toward building simple beers using fairly modest equipment and simple processes. If that kind of content interests you, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If this video is value to you, hit the thumbs up. Why don't you leave me a comment below? Let me know what your favorite style of Belgian beer is. Is it the Saison type farmhouse? Is it the funky ones? Is it the doubles, the triples, the quads? Let me know. So one of the favorite things of mine is to take my home brew next to a good quality commercial example of the style. These are some, I'm not going to drink these today, these are just empty bottles, but I did some taste testing. Really like the Unibrew stuff, good quality Belgian beers. We're going to get into tasting of mine later. For now, I want to just do a quick overview of what my recipe is today before we jump into some brew day. So this is a double recipe that I've gone through a couple iterations of. I'm really happy with the way that this one turned out and the way it tastes. So this batch I brewed, it was a 2.5 gallon batch. The grain bill for this one is about 65% of Pilsner. In this case I used a Weyermann Bohemian floor molded Pilsner, but I think any good quality Pilsner would work fine. I had about 15% of Weyermann Munich, and that's a 6 Lovibond Munich. The recipe had 5.8%, so about 6% of a special B, Dingemans. It's 150 Lovibond. Adds a lot of nice dark fruit, raisiny kind of characters that I think works well in these darker Belgian beers. And also the same amount, 5.8% of Cara Munich. This is the Weyermann 45 Lovibond. The hops were for this one was just a little bit. I had about 15 IBUs of a Northern Brewer at 60 minutes just to give a little bitterness. And then the Hersbrucker, which is hop I've really been enjoying my Belgian beers. So just in this case, a half an ounce, which adds about 5 IBUs, and that was added for the last 10 minutes of the boil. Additionally, to give some more character, I added about half a pound of Demerara sugar. I believe I'm saying that right, Demerara. This stuff, Demerara. The yeast I'm using this for is WLP 530 from White Labs. I'm really enjoying it. It's the Westmalle strain. I've used the equivalent Y yeast one a couple times. I really think the White Lab one maybe gives a little more character. At least that's been my result. I try to ferment them warm. In this case, I'm repitching. I made a starter from some harvested yeast from a prior batch. So I'll go in a little bit of that and how that worked out. So before I crack open my version of the Dubbel, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the brew day, the fermentation, and the bottling process. First, let's check out this yeast starter I made the day prior. It was a bit of an attempt at an overbuilt starter. I made up 1 liter of starter and then added a jar of harvested yeast. My goal was to pitch about half a liter of actively fermenting starter and then save about half a liter to be used for a future batch. I don't think I actually used the amount I saved, but the half liter that I pitched into the batch worked out really well. This box was used to insulate my mash when I used my prior fly spard setup and process. I figured I would give the box a try today. It is a bit oversized for this small batch, and I'm not sure it works any better than just wrapping the kettle in blankets. But I go ahead and I mix in my grain with the strike water. I sometimes question the accuracy of my pH meter, but it always makes me feel good when I get a reading that is just about right on target. So this batch mashed for 60 minutes at 150 degrees Fahrenheit or 65.6 degrees Celsius. The plan is to boil this one for 60 minutes. The fermentation schedule is to pitch the yeast at 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius. I let it free rise. In this case it got itself up to 74 degrees Fahrenheit or just over 23 degrees Celsius. Then on day 3, I set my temperature to 76 degrees Fahrenheit or 24 degrees Celsius and let that set for the remainder. This clip makes me glad I adjusted my process to remove the grain bag over the sink. I don't think I noticed a little bit of wort spilling out over the back on brew day. Oh well. After adding the wort drained from the grain bag, I'm right at my target pre-boil volume of 3.5 gallons. Nice. As the wort gets close to a boil, I turn off the heat and I mix in the sugar addition. I make sure to stir it in well, while getting some prime footage of my forearm and elbow in the process. This batch just gets a small addition of Northern Brewer hops at the start of the boil for 60 minutes, and then another addition of Hersbrucker hops at 10 minutes left in the boil. After the boil, I move the kettle back to the sink to chill using my immersion chiller and spoon. It takes me 15 minutes to get it down close to 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius. I will then chill it the rest of the way in my fermentation chamber. For a batch of this size with minimal hop additions, my strainer and funnel setup works quite well. It's a fairly easy way to strain out the majority of the hop matter from getting into the fermenter. While I think I'm improving in my skills as a video content creator, I still just have not mastered the ability to take a quality gravity reading, either a photo or a video. Oh well, in any case, my target was 1067 and I measured 1068. You're just going to have to trust me on that reading. Looks like I'm getting pretty close to my target of 68 degrees Fahrenheit to pitch my yeast though. As I mentioned earlier, I'm doing something a little different with my starter this time. Recall, this is only a 2.5 gallon batch. For that batch size, I generally want to pitch about a half liter of starter wort. I'm hoping there is plenty of yeast in an active half liter of starter wort, and then I can just set aside the rest to use for a future batch. I add the remaining wort back into my flask where I'll let it continue to ferment before I decant it and add it into a jar to save. So I go ahead and add the half liter starter into the now chilled wort. Hey, you in front there, hey, I'm trying to see back here. Geez, some people. Well, it seems like the yeast starter worked well. By the next morning, the fermentation was rocking along with a really nice solid krausen. WLP 530 can be a pretty aggressive fermenter. It's got a sticky krausen that just seems to build on itself even after fermentation has started to slow. I had a little bit of a blowout, so I swapped out the stopper and blow-off tube with a clean pair. After 17 days, it was time to bottle this one. I've had good luck using Domino Dot sugar cubes for priming bottles, but with this batch, I wanted to target a higher carbonation level of around 3 volumes. So I measured out a specific amount of sugar into each bottle. As we'll see during the tasting, I did not quite get the carbonation level that I wanted. I had had carbonation issues one time before when I bottled a quad that was fermented with WLP 530. This one came in around 8% ABV, which is not that high. In the future though, I think I'll just add a yeast like CBC1 at bottling time and see if that helps out. I then filled the primed bottles directly from the fermenter using a bottling wand. Alright, so here we have the results. Since this beer is destined for competition, I set a couple bottles aside and they've been chilling. What I want to do is I'm going to pour a small sample cup like the judge may have, and then I'll pour some more into this cup. I'm going to take some quick impressions, then I'm going to take a break, fill out the BJCP score sheet, and then I want to be able to compare this when I get the results back from the Dominion Cup competition. So the tasting for the Dominion Cup competition is going to be this following week. So today is Sunday, and I think on Wednesday the competition starts. So I wanted to taste a beer that is about the same age as what the competition judges will be tasting. The same bottles that were bottled on the same day, kind of stored them aside. So let's go ahead and crack open the beer and see how it looks. I was having some troubles with carbonation, so that's probably my biggest concern with this batch. So we'll see how these beers do. I set them aside in a warm area so that they would warm up, and hopefully that would boost up the carbonation level. It looks pretty good. Maybe not, definitely not the carbonation level that I was hoping, even with a reasonably aggressive pour. But if we look at those, it's a beautiful colored beer. Let me go ahead and evaluate the beer, fill out the sheet, and I'll come back with my thoughts and do a quick overview. So I filled out a score sheet. So jump the end. My final score, I gave it was a 38. Is that high? Is that a little too high? I'm not quite sure. So the beer, we look at aroma. The aroma is nice. It's got really nice. It's got, I guess what I said, sweet malty aroma, medium level of dark fruit, raisin character, and yeast character is present. I think that's all appropriate. I think it smells really nice. We look at so I gave it a 10 out of 12 for aroma. For appearance, I gave it a 2 out of 3. I thought it looked really nice. I think the color is wonderful. I think it looked, I noticed in this glass, the head looked, it's almost gone now, but it had a nice kind of creamy head in this glass that didn't quite translate over into this glass. This glass looks that, the carbonation is low, but I think as far as appearance, the rich golden amber color, beige, creamy head, very nice and clear. I think it's a beautiful looking beer. 2 out of 3. Just lost probably a little point just because of maybe a little lack of carbonation. It doesn't have that big creamy head that a double may have. Flavor, I knocked off a couple points. I gave it a 15 out of 20. I think it's got a nice malty sweetness. There's a touch of alcohol warmth, which I don't think is inappropriate for the style. I think the bitterness, a little bit of hop character is on. I think maybe just a little. Maybe it might be for. So I guess this is one thing I wonder about. Like when you taste it versus commercial beer. Some of the commercial ones are definitely less sweet than my beer is. Like the West Mall Double is almost brown ale-ish, almost like a Belgian brown ale to some extent more. Whereas the Unibrow example, I think, was a lot closer to this. And it's what I like, so, but I'm a little worried that it may be just a little touch sweet for competition style. Mouthfeel, 3 out of 5. Lost points mostly, I thought, for the lack of carbonation. Carbonation is definitely low, so I need to figure out my bottling process there. Medium carbonation, light for style is what I said. It's got a medium body, which I think is appropriate. Overall impression, 8 out of 10. It might be a little higher. It might be some of my personal preference. It could be, somebody gave it a 6 or 7 out of 10. I think that would be fine as well. So it's probably a solid example of the style. Leans towards sweet, maybe a little too sweet. And then higher carbonation might crisp up the beer. So I think if it was higher carbonated, I think it might be a little more in line with what I want, a little bit more crisp and refreshing. So again, overall, a 38 out of 50, I thought. Pretty good, close to the stylistic accuracy. I think it was pretty good. I'm not going to say it's flawless, but it doesn't have significant flaws. I think it's a lot closer to wonderful than lifeless, and I'm definitely curious if the carbonation level was at the appropriate level, how much that would improve this beer. But so if you stuck around this far, well, thanks a lot. I hope you can check out my channel. I've got other content related toward either brewing Belgian beers. I've at least got some Saison stuff up there already. I'm sure I'll be brewing more Belgian beers. I've got some more content on brewing small batch, 2.5 gallon brew in the bag, as well as 5 gallon brew in the bag and 1 gallon brew in the bag. So I hope you found this interesting, and I hope you can take this information and get out there and build some great beer.